Despite its title, this movie is not the story of a man suffering through a severe neck injury. Instead, it subverts expectations by showing us how the world of jazz and jazz bands can be ruthless in a way we've never seen. Watch as Miles Teller, playing Andrew, a wide-eyed and ambitious jazz drummer, fight for acceptance from an uncompromising jazz instructor, Terrence Fletcher, played by an astonishingly jacked J.K. Simmons. So wipe that blood off my drum set, because this is Whiplash.
That last sentence got me pretty good.
I know.
Wipe that blood off my drum set.
I always try to make that like finale kind of like a laugh. Like I want to make you laugh, you know? Because, you know, we're just trying to make each other laugh here.
You shut your fucking mouth. But
no, it's just like Chris and I, we just try to make each other laugh.
Yeah. For sure, you know. You're working on it. You know what I mean?
Socks have your face on them.
Yeah, they do.
We don't have to show it.
I'm not showing them, but yeah.
I think it's better if they don't see it actually, because like your imagination is better than what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it was a gift. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah,
it was a gift. Yeah, it was.
I remember it, but it is every time I see it, it's always shocking.
Yeah, just to be clear, the pattern is of my head as a little kid. It's not just me. They're probably picturing adult me, but
but it sounds way worse that it's you as a little kid.
It's just patterns of child me on a sock. What's weird about that?
I guess because you're wearing it, it's not that weird, but it's funny. Because if people didn't know that was you, it would just be a little kid on your sock.
Well, you know what's funny is I had a pair of shoes that had a picture of little kid me on them.
Yeah.
These are gifts, by the way, that were custom made for me.
No, this is how you get that. This is how you shop for clothes.
Yeah, this is what I'm like. Anyway, but I've had people ask me if they were my son. You know,
which is kind of great.
Yeah, but I'm like, nope, it's me.
Imagine a dad casually wearing that. If I was a dad, I'd do it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, man. Well, that being said, this was a good podcast. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah.
Also, if you haven't noticed, the drip in this podcast is going off. This sweater, stay nice.
This is for watchers, by the way. Listeners, just...
We're wearing merch. We have merch.
Yeah.
So right now, Chris is wearing the Stay Nice sweatshirt, and I think it looks fantastic. I am wearing the Stay Nice hat. It just says Stay Nice and then NDMN for Nice Student Movie Night in the back. If you're interested, we also have a mug. And if you're interested in getting our merch, supporting us, then you can go to nicestudentmovienight.com or click the link in the description. We're just super excited that we have this, and this is going to be the hat I probably wear for all our videos, and I'm really pumped for you guys to be a part of that.
Yeah, we appreciate your support. All right, Whiplash.
This is one of those movies that's like, because we like this movie so much, it's hard to know like where to start with it.
Yeah.
I felt that way about Goodfellas too.
For sure. I love Whiplash. This movie's, it's just, you know what I mean? It's so fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I think like as a drummer too, which is funny, I hate saying stuff like that, as like, you know, like, oh,
why do you hate saying stuff like that?
Because it feels like I'm more qualified to like it than other people or something, but it's more of like, I think it just connected with me a little bit more because there aren't a lot of movies that are about drummers.
Well, you have more context.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think seeing a movie that conveys drums in such a cool way, like the filmmaking makes drumming look cool.
Yeah.
You know? And it was cool. It was nice to see because there's so many movies about athletes or, you know, guitarists or other types of, you know, niches.
You know what's funny? I never was, when I watched this movie for the first time, my takeaway wasn't like drumming is cool. My takeaway was, and I'm not saying your perspective is wrong or anything, but my personal takeaway was like, I never looked at drumming as this like intense, dangerous thing. The way this movie shows it is.
Yeah, and it's obviously heightened like crazy, right? It's a movie, you know, it operates more as a thriller than it does like a music movie.
Yeah, totally.
But what I will say though is like what I love about drums is that it's a full body experience that you put into it.
Oh yeah, and that's definitely what this movie
exactly
shows.
Like you put both your arms and both your legs into it, you know, as opposed to a lot of instruments it's usually fingers, you know, most of the time, which is not putting down other instruments. Those are awesome, you know, but I'm just saying that the thing that I like about drums is it gets my kind of ADD out of my system because I'm like, I'm fully occupied, you know?
That's interesting. I mean, did you watch this movie in theaters? Did you?
No.
Okay.
I rented it.
Wow, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you rented it like Was it a while after the movie had come out, or was it pretty soon around like that time?
Probably 2016 or so.
Okay, so that was like the year La La Land came out. So Damien Chazelle was kind of a name, but he was coming out with the second feature.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is I honestly don't remember which I saw first. I'm pretty sure I saw Whiplash before La La Land, if I had to guess. I didn't really catch much, wind of this movie which was funny enough, but I did come across the famous clip on YouTube of the not quite my tempo moment.
Right, which is, I was gonna say, like a big point that I made in my like notes for this movie is that this movie, I think, how back in like the 90s, 80s, or before streaming basically, the way movies would have a second life was through home video.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, if a movie didn't do it that well in theaters, that's kind of how it could be saved. Fight Club is like the example everyone throws around. That Fight Club was a success through home video.
It makes its money back through the home video sales.
It makes the money back through the home video sales, but it also stays relevant through home video.
Got it. Okay. It's like its own way of going viral almost.
Nowadays, I feel like a lot of movies that, Whiplash did well in theaters, but maybe didn't get like huge mainstream success. The way they stand the test of time is through YouTube. And like how they get clipped, how they get turned into shorts, how people like meme them, and I think Whiplash was a big YouTube clip movie.
Oh yeah.
Rushing or Dragging, that sequence I've seen the full YouTube clip of it. I've seen the Instagram video where people put the script below it and it's scrolling by.
Yeah, the lessons from the screenplay.
I've seen like spoofs of it. I've also seen like the whole like not quite my tempo, are you rushing or are you dragging became a meme and it became a quote. It became a big part of the internet.
Yeah, like any clip now with poor J.K. Simmons, people are going to comment in the YouTube video section.
Yeah.
Saying not quite my tempo.
And before that, J.K. Simmons, like his whole internet thing was Sam Raimi.
Yeah, he'll always be my Mr. Jameson.
Well, it still is in a sense, but that was the big meme for J.K. Simmons, and then it became Whiplash. It's just an interesting point, right? Like,
sure.
This movie became a huge YouTube movie as well.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that, but that's how I discovered it. So it's incredibly true. I mean, even Weird Al's parodied it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like an iconic one. And Weird Al is the student, and yeah. The way I saw it was I got it recommended from a friend. I hadn't even seen the trailer, so I knew nothing about it.
Oh, you went in fully blind.
Right, it was a gift.
It's always a gift to go to movies like without knowing anything about them. That's always something.
I watch a lot of trailers too, so like for me, I have a big trailer addiction. I can't like avoid it. And so when it happens for me, I'm actually like, oh, nice.
My stepdad does a thing. I think I've told you about this, but my stepdad does a thing whenever I show him a trailer for a movie that's coming out that I'm excited for. Right. When I was a kid, I would do this. He would start to watch it, and then like 30 seconds in, he would just pause and be like, okay, I'm interested. I'm not going to watch the rest because he's going to just give things away from then on. So if it already sold the ticket, there's no point in watching it.
And that's how it should be. I think my problem is like, not only do I like movie trailers, or I can't avoid them. Killers of the Flower Moon trailer comes out, like I can't not see it, you know? But also because I do actually go to the theater even by myself a lot, I'm gonna catch them anyways.
That's true.
And
that's very true.
I know some people, like I was at the Alamo Draft House, the trailer start. There's a guy next to me that's literally puts on his AirPods and looks down.
Like tunes them out.
And I'm like, that's hardcore. That's like Alamo Draft House crowd though. That's like, those are the people that are just like, we're film lovers and we are loyal to our medium.
Yeah, they put themselves, they want the authentic experience, essentially.
100%. I'm not like that, but there is a part of me that wishes there was you gotta sell your movie, but it's just hard because trailers do reveal everything.
Yeah.
Anyways, went in blind.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, it was like a packed theater, and the moment J.K. Simmons first screams.
Then why the fuck didn't you say so?
At Elmer Fudd.
Yeah, Elmer Fudd. Yeah.
And right when that moment happens, it's like it was like watching a horror movie and the first jump scare happens. It's like the air gets sucked out of the room.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right? You feel it though. Like even when people aren't screaming, you feel the tension. And that's what was really cool about it. And then on top of that, you get the music that's blasting through the speakers. Like when they first play Whiplash, and you know how it's all quiet and everyone lifts their instruments, and it does those quick insert shots. It's all this tension, and then you get that close up of Fletcher's hand, just dun dun dun.
Yeah, counting in.
And it starts. It was like watching in John Wick when he's about to start an action sequence. You know what I mean? But it was such a shocker. I was like, who is this guy who made this movie? I didn't know J.K. Simmons was capable of this. I didn't know Miles Teller was capable of this, and it was a true surprise.
Yeah. I mean, same here. I always associated J.K. Simmons, like we mentioned earlier, with Mr. Jameson. Give me pictures of Spider-Man.
So maybe J.K. Simmons was an easier buy-in because you didn't know that he was capable of like a aggro, screaming, intimidating.
But to the level he does it in Whiplash is completely different.
In Whiplash, it feels emotionally manipulative.
Well, and you've never been afraid of him, too, because he was funny in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. He was hilarious. His scenes are fucking awesome.
His scenes play like His Girl Friday, where it's like very rapid, quick
100%. That's a great comparison. But, like, yeah, seeing him in Whiplash, though, it's the first time you see, like the way the shots are so close to him, and like even like when he first confronts Elmer Fudd about "Are you out of tune?" The shot or like the reverse shot that's on Elmer Fudd, Fletcher is taking up like 2/3 of the frame and is partially blocking his face.
Well,
like he is in your face. There's nothing else. You're so suffocated by his presence.
It's so interesting because I rewatched the short film.
Okay,
right, because J.K. Simmons is in the short film, and the way they shoot that, there's like. A lot of the scenes, it's like showing J.K. Simmons towering over the students, like especially the Elmer Fudd sequence.
Yeah.
And when they shot the actual movie, he's kneeling down face to face, which is the better decision because now it feels like he's right there with you.
Yeah.
And you can't escape him. Where I understand the decision of having him tower over because that's like the obvious bigger than you. But there's something about it that's so much more intimate when he's right there.
Yeah, it like reminds me of like the drill sergeant scenes from Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, I mean,
where he's just in your face. Like it's kind of what he's doing, right? He's doing essentially military like conditioning, mind control shit.
Well, it's such a great contrast from Neiman's First Class, right? Neiman, Miles Teller's character. That First Class, he comes in, and the teacher comes in, is like, "Good morning, everyone," and everyone's kind of not responding. He's like, "Good morning, everyone. Good morning," and that teacher's kind of wearing a loose button-up. Everyone's kind of scattering, kind of talking to each other. And then when we get to Fletcher's class, everyone's like there. They come in. We get these quick insert shots of like the suitcases.
And they're tuning too.
And you hear that line, "Milk the..."
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it. We'll bleep it out.
Yeah.
But and you're like, okay, there's something else going on here. And then Fletcher walks in. Everyone stands. And it's quiet. And Fletcher like has like... minimalistic, a hat, a jacket, takes off his headphones, immediately starts.
Yeah.
There's no conversation of how are you?
Yeah.
And he treats it, and it's like, I'm glad we got those two scenes. So like now we just know this is the real shit.
Yeah, and the color correction is completely different in the two different rooms.
The color scheme, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? I was looking at the teacher in the old class, in the beginning.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I'm just trying to remember, though. At the time, I was trying to remember who he was, because he looked super familiar to me. I was like, why? And I looked at his filmography. I didn't really see much. I was like, where have I seen? I've 100% seen this dude.
Yeah.
He was in a Broadway play called Claiborne Park that I saw when I was 17.
No
and
way.
I fucking recognized him from that play.
This time around.
Yeah,
when you watched it this time, you registered that.
Literally this morning when I watched it.
Because of the budget constraints of this movie, he had to shoot on digital. And he's like, I hate digital photography. I rarely think it's great. He's one of those that afterwards he shot La La Land on film and Babylon on film.
That's just his thing, basically.
And he said that he studied a lot of filmmakers that use digital photography well. And he says David Fincher, he feels like uses digital photography the best. And he saw that what David Fincher does really well is that if you have an indoor location that doesn't have any natural light coming in, the best thing to do with digital photography is to stick with one color palette and just really go all in on that, because that will bring focus and that will make it look good. And then he also studied what colors look good. He saw that yellow looked good. He saw green, blue looked good.
Yeah,
and
that's super interesting. I didn't know that.
A lot of the reason the movie looks the way it does is because of the restraints they had. But Damien Chazelle was smart enough to be like, okay, if I'm shooting digital, what colors look good in digital?
That's crazy. That's so funny because, like, to me, it feels so intentional.
I mean, I bet there's more thought into it.
Exactly.
But it isn't, like, the initial thought of it was so practical, but in a very impressive way. Like, any other filmmaker would be like, you're going to have to shoot digital, and they would just shoot.
Just get a couple soft boxes and just make it work.
Yeah, but it's just really cool.
Yeah, I mean, because it's crazy, because I was watching it and I didn't Google it or anything like that, because I just wanted to have, just my own ideas of what the color scheme could have meant. Mm-hmm. And it's probably pretty obvious, but to me, the yellowish kind of represents Andrew's, like, desires or his like ascension, evolution as a person, growing confidence, because it's super cold in the beginning, right? Even right off the bat when it opens with him, playing drums by himself and all that stuff.
That shot especially feels like a Fincher movie where it's like green and blue.
Exactly.
It's like a dungeon.
Yeah, exactly. But it's once he goes and snoops on Fletcher's class to watch it is when it turns yellow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then immediately after that is when he goes and practices and all,
Listen, there's a lot of like that just when you're talking about it, you're talking about subjective filmmaking, right? Using camera movements, telling your story based on a point of view.
Yeah.
And you don't always have to shoot movies that way, but these type of stories are best when you shoot it through Andrew's perspective, right? And the best filmmaker to ever do that in our lifetime, we were talking about it off camera, is probably Martin Scorsese. Like the best filmmaker alive to do that is Martin Scorsese. Go back and watch Taxi Driver. He shoots that entire movie through Travis Bickle's perspective.
Yeah,
and just to finish off my point,
go ahead.
Is right after Fletcher has that hallway conversation with Andrew and just be like, "Hey man, listen, don't worry about the numbers or notes. Just have fun out there." Andrew walks in and it suddenly goes into a slower shutter speed. It's almost like romantic.
That's super interesting because like I had all these notes about how isolated Andrew is as a character, and it's funny I just didn't even connect the dots of it being connected to Taxi Driver, but that's super true because Taxi Driver's obviously very much about an isolated individual who deals with obsession in his own way.
Yeah.
But I think it's so interesting though because going off of that though, like Andrew is he's so comfortably alone in the beginning too. Like when he walks right by parties going on and he just doesn't care.
Oh yeah. I think like he in his first date with Nicole, he even says he was just like, "Yeah, I don't feel like people like me either, but it's okay, people change, it's fine." Like he even like Nicole is more broken up about the fact that like it's okay, but I just don't think people like me. You can tell that affects her, and Andrew is just like, "It's okay, whatever." Like he doesn't have a roommate in his dorm, which I mean. Maybe that was just he just got a single, but it's something to be said that they didn't give him a roommate. They didn't you don't see him with friends. You don't see him like talking to even his bandmates unless it's like for a practical reason.
Exactly. I mean, he even says in the dinner scene when when he's like, "Got any friends, Andy?" And he's like, "No." I
don't see any use for them.
He literally comfortably says that. The one person he's kind of cool with is Ryan Connolly in the beginning. You remember how he's like happy to see him when he comes in?
Yeah, well, Connolly's the only person that's like not a dick to him.
Well, yeah, exactly. But the thing that's interesting though is that like Andrew ends up like growing to hate him towards the end of the movie because of everything that happens.
I really do think you're a leprechaun.
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna call you Flannery.
There's no pot of gold down there.
We'll talk about the cursing in this movie, but
it's
like
genius. But
yeah,
just to make one last point about Andrew being an isolated character is like. I really like it because obviously like the nature of the field he's in, he's underappreciated in it, and he just, you know what I mean? His dad doesn't even really fully recognize what he puts himself through. And even down to like the first time after the Not Quite My Tempo scene when he's being berated, they could have easily, like from a screenwriting perspective, had some guy go up to him and be like, "Hey, he did that to me my first time too. Hey, hang in there, man." Like someone being nice to him. No one fucking supports him because they're all used to being berated. When he's first getting yelled at, everyone's kind of staring awkwardly. Like it reminds me of like, those videos of like Karens like going crazy and yelling, and you see their kids like kind of just blankly like waiting for it to be over.
I deal with this at home.
Yeah. And so like that's what it kind of felt like when the rest of the band is awkwardly sitting there while Fletcher's screaming at Andrew.
When you watch that short film, which if anybody hasn't, go see it.
Yeah.
Because it's a great study, especially if you're an aspiring filmmaker, of like what a short can do to convey something when you're trying to pitch a feature.
Better than you can do out loud describing it to a studio head. I get that.
Because that sequence, and when it's in the movie it does it really well, but that sequence kind of gives you a sense of this is the world we're building, where jazz drumming is not like this fun musical thing. It is intense, it's military-like.
Yeah.
And this is the dynamic we're going to be focusing on.
What's cool about the short film is there are some types of movies that you can't really convey out loud. Like, this literally just happened. A family member of mine I was with recently, and I was trying to describe to her the premise of Whiplash. And clearly she was like listening, but wasn't like interested. And I was saying like, oh, well, it's about like he goes to this new school and the teacher's like really intense, and it's like his standards are high. And like, you can't really...
You start seeing the eyes glaze over a little bit.
A little bit. And so I ended up just for fun pulling up the Not Quite My Tempo scene.
Yeah.
And immediately, like, her jaw dropped and it was fully like, what the hell is this? So it makes sense to like pitch it to studios. You need to see that scene happen.
That scene is also like, because they have J.K. Simmons in the short,
Yeah.
I can understand from a producing perspective just being like, okay, if we have someone that is a known movie star and we show him giving a very actor-y performance, it'll get the studio excited to be like, oh, this is a movie.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? When you watch that scene, it feels like a movie. To kind of bring the point home a little bit, this movie is I feel like ultimate film student movie. You know what I mean? I feel like if you're a film student, you can show a film student this movie and they can learn a lot. I remember I was sitting next to someone at the Alamo Draft House when I went to go see Old Boy for the first time in theaters. I had seen it before, but I was seeing it for the first time in theaters. And a guy next to me was obviously an editor because he was talking to his friend about editing and all that stuff. And he was like, yeah, one of the movies that I like to show my students is Whiplash, just because you can teach them how, like, during the drumming scenes, they're editing very quickly with fast cuts, and then when you have dinner table scenes, it's more languid and slow, and it kind of is an easy way in for them to learn how editing can be used to evoke an emotion.
Yeah, rhythm of the drama and that sort of thing.
And I was like, I'm shooting a Whiplash podcast in 2 weeks. This is insane that I'm getting this right now.
Yeah, well, and also, like, it looks achievable to student filmmakers. Like, there's no special effects. It's really just compelling acting and writing, and the drama is just real.
But what's really cool about it is that the movie still looks good.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
It's
it
like-
looks
it's-
like a thriller movie, but without. It's like anyone can make a movie.
But
like
there's
Whiplash.
like ambitious shots in there. Like, I gotta say, like, it's kind of amazing the confidence that Damien Chazelle goes in with this. Because when you have a limited budget like that and you've been fighting for a movie, it's hard to keep that momentum of like, well, it still's gotta look fucking great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make my Taxi Driver. I'm gonna make my Scorsese movie.
One of my favorite themes that this movie deals with is kind of the fear of mediocrity.
Oh, yes.
And I think, at least, I don't know about you, like we're I guess we can call each other artists, right? You know, we're creative people. You know,
Yeah.
we make shit, and a lot of other people deal with this too. You know, who also make shit is the way I'm going to categorize them from now on. People who make shit. I feel like people like us are more afraid of being called okay or mediocre at something than we are of being told that we're bad.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It reminds me of that joke, not that joke, but just something that, an anecdote of how when Bill Murray and Chevy Chase used to have that iconic, like, they had that iconic beef. Something that Bill Murray said to Chevy Chase was like, you're only kind of funny.
Or no, he says you're medium level talent.
You're medium level talent, which is like, to someone that's a comedian that like is trying to be great, is the biggest insult ever.
And then, like, well, Chevy Chase, I think what you're thinking of is when he called Dan Harmon on Community and left him an angry voicemail that kind of leaked, or not leaked, but Dan Harmon openly showed it publicly.
Right.
But yeah, in part of the whole rant that Chevy Chase goes on, he ends up saying, "You're not funny. You're okay."
Which is like, he knows that is like an insult.
That's way exactly. So
To your point.
I think that's what's interesting, though. It's like it hits a real, like, sensitive spot that I think people who want to be good at stuff are afraid of just being okay.
Well, to me, you know, it's interesting because I moved to LA when I turned 21. I'm 27 now. And I moved with the aspirations of wanting to be like a proper filmmaker.
Sure.
Inspired heavily by Damien Chazelle. I mean, I think I've told you the story of just like watching La La Land 4 times in theaters, and that being a big part of the reason why I moved here. It's such a like a schmaltzy Hallmark card LA like version of an LA story, but it's very true.
Yeah.
And but I went in being like, well, Damien Chazelle made fucking La La Land. You know, Spielberg made Jaws when he was 25. Like, and I had no like. I had no self-awareness, and I was like, no, I can be like those guys. Yeah. Like, and there were people behind me who's like, well, those guys, you know, they're once in a generation talent. I'm like, oh no, but I'm good like that. I can do it. That conversation that he has with the dad of just like, when the dad is like, you still have plenty of options still, when Andrew's kind of nervous about how he did with Schaefer, if he's going to get into the class. And Andrew's like, I don't want options. And the dad is talking about, you get perspective when you're my age. And he's like, I don't want perspective.
Yeah, I wrote that down, funny enough.
This movie tackles like a certain point in your life when you really do feel that way.
You know, but just to go off your point real quick about the lack of self-awareness, I just want to say it's great to do that, though. I think, like, Dave Grohl has a quote, you know, I think I told you about it before, but for listeners, is he said, you should never be intimidated by your heroes. you should never look at them and say, oh, fuck, I wish I could do that. You should look at them and say, fuck, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, that's what brought you here in the first place. Just to kind of wrap that real quick.
Totally. And it's so interesting that there's two sides to Damien Chazelle, right? There's this side, which is he's exploring is like, yeah, sure, if you want to be a great, that's great. But this is what it takes. And is it worth it? Like, is it worth it? And then there's that other side of Damien Chazelle that is the La La Land of just like, follow your dreams. It's worth everything. You know what I mean? Like, it is so interesting that he tackles both things at once.
Both sides of that coin.
Like, and a lot of the criticism towards La La Land is that, like, this is the guy who makes Whiplash, and then he's doing this, like, really romantic view of LA. And I'm like, as a person, I also feel both ways.
Well, I mean, yeah, we all have kind of love-hate relationships with our art, don't we? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just everyone who make, like I said, people who make shit will sometimes fucking despise that they do it. You know what I mean?
I think the reason why I like Babylon so much, to your point, is that it tackles both at the same time.
Yeah.
Which creates this, like, explosive movie, but, like...
Interesting, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, Andrew's dad, Jim, very much represents that mediocrity that he's afraid of becoming.
I mean, Jim is like a polo wearing, tucked into a cargo.
Gets his head bumped in the theater.
Cargo shorts. Oh yeah, head bumped. Like this. That's something I picked up on this watch. That tiny touch of his head getting bumped in the theater.
Yeah.
Such it's saying something.
Yeah.
That's like that's very talented filmmaker shit. It's adding the little details.
It's good, simple storytelling. And, like, obviously the Raisinets that, he doesn't want to eat the Raisinets. Yeah. It's funny from a practical perspective. Andrew could easily just get another cup or another bowl or something to put it in. But anyway.
Well, they're splitting a large. You don't, saving money. Popcorn's expensive sometimes, so it makes sense.
No, I'm not talking about buying a separate popcorn. I'm saying getting an empty cup. You can do that.
That's making a bigger deal of it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I know. It's just funny. But, they set it up very clearly that, down to, during the dinner scene, which the dinner scene's my favorite scene in the movie, by the way. I rewatched that scene the most out of all of them.
Is that, okay, I'm sure you like that scene a lot. I'm not doubting that at all. And it is an amazing scene. But is that really your favorite scene?
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
Yeah.
More than the last 10 minutes.
Okay, well, I guess, okay. Objectively better the last 10 minutes, but I'm talking about in terms of, like, a scene I've never seen, like a dialogue scene I've never seen.
Maybe something that resonates with you more.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It means something to me personally a little bit.
Got it.
I'm not, by the way, that's not a knock at all towards my loved ones and family. They all perfectly support what I do. That's not me saying, like, oh, I wasn't supported.
No, but I feel like a lot of people can relate to it. Also, I just want to make a point. I wasn't saying that, like, you think this scene's better. I was just kind of questioning a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, yeah. So
what I was going to say real quick, though, is that, like, remember how Uncle Frank, wasn't that his name?
Uh-huh.
How he's like, Jimbo, it's overcooked. I can hardly chew this thing. And he just kind of laughs it off, doesn't stand up for himself. And even in the editing, you can see, like, Andrew just looking at his dad like, you fucking loser.
Yeah. Well, and then, like, the the JV football players come in and everyone's immediately like, yo, and that was right after, like, Andrew was kind of explaining where he was in class.
They literally interrupt him.
Well, because he's explaining how he's doing in the jazz class, right?
Yeah.
They interrupt him when those two come in, and everyone's giving them props. And that's when Andrew said, it's JV. It's not even varsity.
Yeah.
No. He says it's Division 3.
Yeah.
Though that interaction with those two guys is basically the Winklevoss twins and and Mark Zuckerberg.
It's like his little Fincher homage.
Aaron Sorkin, more like. But, like, the way they talk to each other, how, like, he's coming rapping back and forth is like 4 words you'll never hear from the NFL. That felt like an Aaron Sorkin.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
We've all had that moment where we feel like people back home don't understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, yeah, and it's super patronizing and condescending the way they come across to him too. The fact that, like, immediately when he explains that he's their new core drummer in one of the best music schools in the country, he immediately is like, does the studio get you a job? It's like immediately just looking to undermine it. And that's what happens with a lot of people who are in artistic fields. You know what I'm saying? Immediately, like, oh, what's the job? Are you going to get paid? And
but to be fair, though,
yeah,
as we get older, as I get older, I also, like, understand both sides. And it's kind of that thing of, like, when they start talking about, like, is it worth it to be a great when you're just going to have heroin overdose or just, like, you die at the age of 34? And then Andrew says that line of just, like, I would rather, Like, what does he say?
I'd rather die at 34 from heroin and have people at a dinner table talk about me than
live to 90.
Yeah.
And
no one remember who I was.
Yeah, which is, see, that's a perspective that I no longer, like, I don't agree with. Because I used to, like, when I was younger, I did believe that your work should outlast you. Your work should, like, be what matters.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're at that age of just ambition and just you're hungry for it. So,
well, that's
interesting.
Yeah, but that's not really what I'm talking about in terms of like his perspective on like having to push himself to the absolute limit. I'm more talking about just I'm sure most artists can relate to families just naturally condescending to being in their field. You know what I mean? Because
well, it's a lack of understanding of what it takes.
Well,
to
ignorance
be
is one thing. Ignorance is one thing, but it's another thing again to be like, oh, I'm glad you have it all figured out. It is a nasty business, I'm sure. And then just go on to praise their kids' football. Well, it's immediately his way of saying, my kids are better than yours.
I mean, sure. But I also see it as, like, I don't understand what you do. So I'm just going to, like, focus in on what I do understand, which is football.
But he's such an afterthought, though. Remember how, like, when it's, like, the talent at this table... And Andrew with your drumming, you know, it's like it's literally like
no. I'm not. There's a level to what you're saying that I do agree with.
Yeah,
it's hard to even fucking explain it sometimes. Mm-hmm. Now it's like I can see why they would just be like, all right, anyways, so what are you doing? You know what I mean? And they understand football. They understand what it takes to be an athlete. Yeah. So they're just gonna want to focus on that. You know?
Yeah, I think like I think there's a line, like I already said earlier, there's a line between general ignorance, but you can still respectfully ask about it and acknowledge it as a valuable career path just as much as football. You know what I'm saying? I guess I'm more on the field of, a lot of people have probably felt that question of like, oh, does it give you a job? Like it makes some people's blood boil to hear shit like that.
And
that's, you know what
I mean? And like, do you remember how like the dad shuts him up?
Yeah. Oh yeah, when he says you hear from Lincoln Center,
which is like such a great such a great as in like a movie like screenwriting way of just saying shut the fuck up. Yeah. Because it's like the way it cuts back to Andrew just looking at him.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. And then his dad doesn't even stand up for him at all. Like literally, the uncle tells him, he's like, "Oh well, hey, my kids have plenty of friends." Like literally, he's like literally just telling him like, "My kids are better than my brothers."
There are moments though where the dad is like kind of just trying to understand his son, because when he asks like, I was like, "So how's the studio band going?"
Yeah, and he's like, I think he likes me more now.
Which is, I think, is such a pivotal moment. I'm just like, his dad does worry about him. His dad is like kind of being like, does my son not like value himself? Yeah. You know what I mean? And he's trying his best. The dad is trying in the way he knows. Yeah. The way the dad tries is by coming over to his apartment and watching a movie and putting gushers in the room.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
He's not like at all a bad person by any means. He's a good dad that.
But usually dads are just trying their best. Like it's dads have a hard time emotionally connecting in general, and like and it's not always this way. I don't want to just go off like societal norms, but usually mothers are better at connecting with their sons emotionally than dads are, and that's always like a hard relationship. Right? And in this story, the mom ran away. And so there is something to be said. It's like the dad's trying his best, but he just doesn't know how to understand and connect with his son. And so for me, I gave the dad a lot more credit just because like...
Yeah, he has a lot on his shoulders for sure, but there's still a level of like, his dad's also incredibly meek and takes so much bullshit from people.
We gotta mention this one time, played brilliantly by Paul Reiser.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic. He's such a perfect casting for it.
Also, I just watched Funny People for the first time. He's in it. It was great. Paul Reiser plays himself as one of George Simmons, Adam Sandler's
That's
friends.
funny. I didn't even remember that, but
anyways, yeah.
But yeah, his character is just so meek, and he doesn't give Andrew that like swift kick in the ass that like Andrew kind of craves. You know what I mean? I think we all kind of like...
Andrew finds that in Fletcher.
Exactly. To an extreme, obviously.
But there's a reason why he sticks with Fletcher.
There's a reason he grows attracted because he's like the one person that really wants him to be better. And so I think there's something to be said
Andrew
there.
finds something in Fletcher, which is like someone who understands why like he wants to do this.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, you want me to be great.
Because Jim's so comfortable in his own mediocrity, and Andrew doesn't respect that.
Yeah,
he just doesn't respect that.
Yeah, and I think I want to like table this for a second just because we could go on about this forever.
Yeah.
And there's some deeper stuff that I want to talk about, but we already talked about the opening scene. But one thing that I really wanted to mention is I want to take a second to talk a little bit about Andrew and Fletcher and their dynamic, and just go a little bit deeper. And through this, we can talk about the Rushing and Dragon sequence. We can talk about the opening and the finale. But this relationship is one of the most interesting and complicated relationships in movies in a while. Like, it's so...
Yeah.
You can watch this movie again and again and just focus on those two and how they're playing off of each other. Played amazingly by Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons. It's funny, the Miles Teller thing. He can play the cute, innocent boy, but then also play the guy that's just like, don't fuck with me, turn my pages, bitch.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, by the end of the movie, he becomes fully Frankenstein's monster. You know what I'm saying? It almost feels like a...
Well, it's insane, though. Like, it doesn't, like, happen, like, there's a pause right after like he attacks Fletcher and then he kind of gets another job and is not in Schaefer, and then he comes back again. That being said, though, in the opening scene, we already talked about how that scene's shot. It has a drum roll, thinking you're about to see something crazy. When you see the Whiplash text, it has the drum roll, and then it hard cuts to a boy alone in a room, you know, and he's wearing white, Fletcher's wearing black. I love that the movie starts this way because they could have easily not introduced Fletcher
until later.
Until the first band class.
Sure.
Or like the first like actual class where you got into Fletcher's class.
But it tells you what you need to know what the movie's gonna be.
Like, I love movies that immediately give out the thesis of the movie in the beginning, because you're not only hooked, but you just are emotionally connected to the story.
I didn't tell you to stop playing.
Yeah. What does he say?
Where he says, "Why'd you stop playing?" And then he starts playing. He's like, "I didn't tell you to start playing. I asked you why you stopped playing," and then your reaction was to act like a
wind-up monkey.
Yeah, wind-up monkey.
And then I love the fact that Fletcher comes back and he's like, "Whoops, forgot my jacket," which is like a line I wrote down the "forgot my jacket" line shows how Fletcher's toying with Andrew. We get a sense that this might be his method. You know what I mean? And you don't get that until the second watch, but you're like, that is Fletcher.
It's all a game. You know what I mean? Everything is like been planned to a T from Fletcher's end.
Well, every time Fletcher lets Andrew kind of like feel that level of like a validation, he like pulls the rug from underneath. So right from like the hallway scene, right? Where
of course, yeah, he gets him to open up about his dad and his mom. And
yeah. And remember when he breaks down his dad? He's just like, "Dad's a writer." Okay, like, what do you write? And he's like, "Well, he's a teacher." "Oh, what college?" And it's like, high school.
He gets him to like strip him down slowly.
So no players in the family? Or you're just gonna have to listen to the greats. And then he kind of just is a bit like, "Listen, man, don't focus on any numbers or notes. You
just
know,
have fun."
And then immediately it's the rushing or dragging, right?
Yeah.
And then even when he's just like, "Hey, you see these notes? That's a double time swing." Funny enough, I saw another student practicing his double time swing, and I brought him in, and it's fucking
Ryan Connolly.
Right, it's fucking Connolly. So like every moment where he feels like, up until the end when they're having that drink at the bar, and he's just like, "Hey, I need a player. We're doing a Whiplash at Caravan."
And then he ends up totally fucking him over. Yeah.
So it's like, it's all like literally like, I'm gonna bring you in and then push you away, and it's just so manipulative.
Push pull constantly. Do you want to talk about that rushing or dragging scene?
Well, yeah, that's like next, right? Like, so yeah, I feel like it's kind of like Goodfellas, where we knew we had to hit certain scenes, where we knew we had to hit the Copacabana.
Yeah, it's like, for me, it's funny because I'm so interested in this movie, but that scene is like so...
Water?
Yeah, it's so basic to me to where it's like, it's hard for me to come up with things to say because everyone's seen that scene and everyone knows it. Everyone's experienced it.
It's so exciting and terrifying to watch at the same time, right? But if you watch the short film, it's... The performance of Andrew, the actor who plays Andrew in that, is so different than Miles Teller.
Yeah, I've seen him before in a couple things too, funny enough.
And the character feels different.
Yeah.
Because the way the actor plays Andrew in the short film is way more timid, way more nervous, like nerdy. I feel like what's brilliant about it is at first, like, Andrew's way more confident, you know? When he's playing and he's like, "All right." Fletcher even's like, "Oh, we got our own," like, what's the drummer that he names?
Buddy Rich.
We got our Buddy Rich here.
Wait, real quick. Do you not know who Buddy Rich is, or have you seen anything of him playing?
No.
Oh, dude.
I know.
I'm showing it to you maybe in the after show or something like that, which we're going to be doing an after show
on
on Patreon.
We do an after show on every episode of the podcast where if you go on our Patreon, we talk for an extra 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's more of a casual hangout once we wrap up the reviews. Buddy Rich is like a frighteningly good drummer. You watch him play, and you're like, that's... Why? Like, Like, I don't know how to explain it. He's so, like, I'm not going to go in a full rant because I'll let you finish, but like, he is so precise in playing. You understand why, because, he's used like the template for this movie because, he has like a little picture of Buddy Rich. He's listening to Buddy Rich throughout the movie and stuff because he's like one of the greatest jazz drummers, who ever lived, he's known as. But anyway, though.
Right, which also about like jazz drumming, just in general. Like I remember Damien Chazelle talking about how like Miles Teller, they had a double for the movie, but Miles Teller did a lot of the drumming himself.
Yeah.
He was a drummer before the movie, but he wasn't a jazz drummer, which I remember Damien Chazelle saying that like it's a very different
completely
ballpark.
Different beast. Yeah, jazz drumming is so technical.
Which you're a drummer, but not jazz drumming.
Not at all. Yeah, I'm like the garage band self-taught teenage drummer.
Can you? Which did you play? You played guitar too, or no?
No. I'll say no. I know how to play like basic bitch chords on guitar.
You know how to play ukulele.
I can play ukulele a bit. But mainly growing up, I was a drummer.
So, can you give a Cliff Notes version for both me and the people at home who are not familiar with the jazz drumming world of kind of the difference between regular garage band drumming, as you put it, versus jazz drumming?
I mean, I think regular garage band drumming is more visceral. It's more just direct, like boom, da, boom, boom, ba. Jazz drumming, and if you watch Whiplash, you can see it's really technical and precise. And even down to the tuning of the drums is different. Yeah. And the way they hold the stick, like, which, Miles Teller didn't know how to do. He had to be taught how to do it. The traditional grip. If you see how his left hand, the stick kind of lays across his palm.
I noticed that.
That's a jazz drumming thing.
It looks like a weird way to hold it.
Yeah, I don't play that
because
way.
Like my dumb non-musician brain is like drumsticks hold like this and then bang.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's kind of what it is for most mainstream drummers.
Yeah, and this time around I was like, because I was writing notes for the movie for the podcast, I was kind of looking at all the things, and I just noticed that I'm like, that looks like an uncomfortable way to hold it.
Yeah, I mean, even down to like what they mentioned in the beginning. When he's going to Fletcher's first class, Nate Lang's character, the other guy, what's the name of the other drummer? Not Connolly, Tanner, yeah.
Who says my favorite line, "Find the fucking folder! You're a dumb fuck! A dumb fuck!"
Yeah, he's like, "You're a dumb fuck!
A dumb fuck!" He says it with like a Josh Peck delivery.
Oh yeah, he says so viscerally. But with that being said, how he asks Andrew to tune the drums to a certain thing. I didn't know drums could even be tuned to certain notes.
Okay, I'm glad you said that.
I thought that was subjective.
I wasn't even gonna bring that up because I thought I was like, oh, this is just like me not being a musician or not knowing music.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But I didn't know that either.
Because like drums are tuned. I know that. Drums are definitely tuned. Like the head, because like basically the drums have the heads on them, which is like the skin on the top that you hit.
Yeah.
And you see how they're like little lugs all around it that you tighten and you can loosen because they create basically different frequencies depending on how tight it is.
Okay.
And you're supposed to do it in the same pattern as you would like a tire when you replace it, so it's like a star kind of pattern.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but that's how you're supposed to tune drums. But I did not know drums could be tuned into different like notes, what they mentioned, or like
when he's like, can you give me a C flat or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. So it was interesting. I didn't know that was at all involved in drums.
By the way, did he say can you give me a C flat?
Maybe. I don't
Is C flat a thing? Did I just fuck it up?
No, that's
Is that a thing? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
You're like, I don't want to sound dumb.
Well, sometimes like when we're editing these things, you'll just be like, I kind of thought you were wrong, but I didn't say anything, and I'm just like, say I'm wrong. It's okay.
Yeah, no. Trust me, I would call that out if I heard something.
Okay. I was just like, I don't want to look stupid later. Yeah, I mean, as you can say, we're avoiding this talking about this scene, but he hurls the chair, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the sequences where, like, if you were in a theater, like, god damn, man. This
movie silence is deafening.
Just slaps in a theater. It's so like, it's like you're watching a thriller horror movie.
But isn't that funny though? Like this is what I mean when going back to what I was saying, that like any filmmaker can do this though, because you say this movie slaps in theater, you could easily say the same about Avengers or something. But it's literally just no music in the background, just people in a room.
It's technically amazing because like editing of this sequence that stands out to me, right? Because right before that whole sequence, the camera's kind of gliding. Mm-hmm. Right? It like glides around Fletcher, it's going in and out, and again, subjective camera moves. We're seeing it through Andrew's perspective, and through Andrew's perspective, this is romantic. He made it into Fletcher's
he's
class.
Playing and he's enjoying himself.
It's a thing that I talked about in Goodfellas a lot, right? Where just like the first half of Goodfellas, the camera's moving and it's kind of dollying, it's kind of on a steady cam, it's brilliant, right? It's all romantic. And then the second half of Goodfellas is just like boom, boom, sharp cuts in and out, you know? And it's kind of what it's doing in this sequence. Like right when he hurls the chair, And then he's just like, do you know why I just hurled a chair at you? He's like, were you rushing or were you dragging? And then he like,
that charge that he does to him.
That's the one I remember too. It's just like,
he just starts walking fast.
And then like, if you see the short film, when he's slapping him, it's all one wide.
Yeah.
Where he's slapping, it doesn't cut. But it's so much more effective that it cuts in the sequence. Because it feels way more, because the movie hasn't been cutting that way.
Yeah.
It literally,
it's way more visceral. Like, it hits really hard.
That's what's cool about it, is that the movie hasn't been edited that way until that scene. And then after that, the language changes. The editor, I just want to mention him one time, Tom Cross, who I remember Damien Chazelle in the interview promoting Whiplash. He's like, I worked with an editor who just did a brilliant job. I hope I get to work with him on future movies. He's edited every single Damien Chazelle movie.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. Yeah.
It's sick, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my ongoing theory, and I'm sure plenty of people agree with this, dude. This isn't like my unique take, but my theory about Fletcher is that he's not really concerned with the tempo as much as he is with just trying to condition Andrew to second guess himself and then become more confident later. Because he doesn't know what he did wrong, because he kept saying, you're rushing, you're dragging. He doesn't know what he's doing wrong in that scene.
It's what he says when he's just like, let me be honest, it wasn't him that was like out of tune. It was you, but he didn't know which is worse.
Exactly. They set that up. What Fletcher really values is not skill or precision or talent. He cares about your motivation and your drive. He wants you to put yourself through the fucking ringer to get the thing done, because that will take you way further than doing a fancy trick would. You know what I mean?
Well, there's that line, I have it written right here. Charlie Parker became Charlie Parker because Joe Jones threw a symbol at his head. This line is repeated like twice.
Yeah, that's like ongoing thread that they mentioned.
That's a thing of just like, remember that.
Yeah.
And it was like the whole story of just like Charlie Parker was shooed off stage and booed and everything, and he promised himself he's never going to be embarrassed like that ever again.
Yeah, and what's he do the next day? He practices. That's what he says.
Right, which is like, that's what happens to Andrew, right? Every time he gets berated, every time he gets humiliated, he's like that first time he gets slapped in the face literally by Fletcher. The following sequence is literally him bleeding for the first time drumming.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's the first time he's ever bled like that.
Maybe so, yeah.
And that was also a moment in the movie where I'm just like, I didn't know we would see blood in this movie. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Well, I'm like, I thought this was going to be a jazz movie. I didn't expect there to be blood.
Yeah, and it getting that gnarly over the course. I mean, my hands bled funny enough from drumming before. It's a thing. And it just happens sometimes. I mostly got calluses. I didn't get blisters as much.
I would assume calluses, yeah.
Yeah, but when I was I think like 13 or 14, when I was like pretty new to drumming, I remember I was playing Times Like These by Foo Fighters with like headphones or something like that, just playing along with it. And I saw, my left hand, my thumb bled and smeared on the stick. I just saw red on the stick.
Yeah.
And I remember looking, and obviously it was like, it hurt and it was freaky, but there's also something where you're like, oh, that's fucking rock and roll. I'm bleeding from playing so hard.
And there's those intense shots throughout the movie where like, you just see close-ups of Andrew sweating and just going hard, you know what I mean? And I'm just props to Miles Teller, because like, he probably had to do multiple takes of that, right?
Yeah.
Of all those sequences where he's sweating and it looks like he's about to fucking explode. And I'm like, to keep that energy as an actor, to be in that headspace constantly is insane. I do want to kind of talk a little bit about the earn the part sequence.
Okay, when they're all doing the double time swing and just circling for like, how long did they do it for? Like 6 hours or something?
Well, it cuts
like
to like it's midnight or something.
Or it's like 2 in the morning by the end of it.
Oh yeah, 2 in the morning. The setup for that sequence is something I forgot, like completely. I don't know how, but the whole Sean Casey thing, right?
Yeah.
Where he's like, all right, class, and you can see that he's a little emotional. And he puts a CD, he's like, just listen for a second. And it says to Dr. Fletcher, Sean Casey, they play jazz. And he explains that Sean was a student and the teacher saw that he didn't have anything, but I saw that he had like potential.
He said drive, I think is what he said.
I saw that he had drive. Are we supposed to like think that like he was lying? Like he knows how he really died?
I think so.
So here's my question to you. That whole thing of just like, you're not playing on my time, right? And he has Tanner. I want to call him like Flannery.
Connolly, Ryan Connolly.
It's Fletcher's fault. He has 3 of them just be like, you, go.
Yeah.
Right? Does anyone need to play that fast? Or is he guilty? Is Fletcher, because the way I read it this time around, is Fletcher...
He's just taking his anger out on them, basically.
Is Fletcher taking out his guilt onto them? And...
I never thought of that. That's interesting, yeah.
This time around in this movie, I didn't see this dynamic. Go ahead on that first, and then I'll talk more.
I agree that it wasn't for... He didn't really care how fast they were playing, or that it wasn't necessary to play the fast. Because if you look at it at face value, they're just kind of clanging the drums. It's not really they're playing a beat.
I wanted to ask you that too. I was like, does anyone need to play that fast?
No, I mean, I'm sure, Caravan, that double time swing does look fucking hard. I'll never be able to play like that. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to just be like, it's useless. But I will say, I saw it as more of a conditioning tactic, of like he was just trying to just see how much they can push themselves and how fucking tired.
It's like a drill sergeant in boot camp.
Exactly, that's the way I saw it. But it's interesting because, like you said, under the context of being right after Casey's death, that he was. That's interesting. The idea that he could have been taking out either his anger or his guilt or just all of his feelings on the kids.
The reason I bring that up is because my first few times watching this movie like a while ago was I had the same read you had. It was like conditioning them, right?
Yeah.
And I think this time around, I completely forgot that, J.K. Simmons does cry. Like, he does get actually emotional.
He's affected by it.
And I'm like, okay, so Fletcher isn't this soulless person, right?
Yeah.
He is lying about the suicide. And he has to feel guilty about it. And if he feels guilty about it, this is how he would let that out.
Yeah, you just kind of saw one thing leading to another.
And I'm like, right afterwards, he's like, let's get to work. And immediately, if you notice, he's like, God fucking damn it. And he's like immediately pissed. That doesn't feel like Fletcher angry.
Yeah.
That feels like emotionally angry. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't seem like Fletcher just being like, I'm going to push the students. He like actually feels something.
Yeah, I mean, going off of what you said about like Fletcher not being a soulless person, I think I read an interesting article called Whiplash and Philosophy by Douglas Gruthewis. I apologize if I didn't pronounce it right.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
One of the things that it points out is that Fletcher doesn't really see individual people. He just sees results. You know what I mean? He doesn't care if he ruins a bunch of people's lives in the process of finding his Charlie Parker.
Well, the good job scene is a great example.
Exactly. He summarizes it very well, where he believes, like, if on the other side we get another Charlie Parker, it was worth all of the lives he ruined and the suicide. You know what I'm saying?
And imagine if Joe Jones had just said, you know what? It's okay. Good job. And then maybe we wouldn't have gotten Charlie Parker, and he thinks that's a fucking shame.
Yeah. And the article basically elaborates saying, like, I guess the movie really asks the question of, is beautiful jazz music, great jazz music, is it more important? Is it elevated on a higher pedestal than the other principles of a meaningful life, of friendship, love, kindness? You know what I'm saying? That's really what the movie's trying to get at.
It's interesting. For me, the question this movie's posing is that, is Andrew ambitious about wanting to be a great jazz drummer or one of the greats, or does he just want acceptance from Fletcher? Throughout this whole movie, it's all about Fletcher's acceptance. I like when the dad asks him how studio band, he's like, I think he likes me more. He's constantly like looking for Fletcher's approval, and when Fletcher's like, I found another student who does a double time swing. He's like, what the fuck? And he gets angry, and that's the scene where he practices more. And my favorite shot happens where his bloody hand goes into the ice water.
Dunks it in the ice.
Which I think I told you this on the phone. Isn't that shot something like where a filmmaker thinks of that shot for 10 years until they finally get to move film it?
Yeah.
Where like that's been like film school.
And if according to the story you told, if he's been holding on to that, then he probably had that image in his head.
That's like a beautiful shot. I love that shot. But so like the whole movie up until those last 10 minutes when he finally he finishes the solo and it's beautiful, it cuts to like Miles Teller looking up smiling
100%,
and then it cuts to Fletcher's eyes and you see a smile, but you don't see his mouth, you just see his eyes. It's so good,
it's perfect.
But like that moment is also telling you that it's not about, this movie for me has never been about like this is what it takes to be great. Is that it's more for me about like in Andrew's search of like wanting to be a jazz drummer, he forgot why he was doing it, and like Fletcher lured him so hard that it just became about like, I want Fletcher to think I'm great. Not like being the great,
Even when Fletcher got fired, he wasn't drumming anymore. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And It's interesting because
He would have continued to drum. Because remember that sequence when he was looking at like an old home video and he was like kind of had a tear in his eye?
Yeah.
Sort of remembering why he even went into this?
He was gaining some of his humanity back a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. You know what I mean? I think there's truth in both. And I think that's what's cool about this movie is like you can get something out of it from either end. Right?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you can have such an extensive conversation and still not have a right answer.
Exactly. That's the perfect thing about this movie and why we thought it'd be so interesting to podcast about. But I think like I will say two things. One is that in the setup of the movie, Andrew's already alone and is laser focused on drumming. He just didn't have the right guidance to push him to that point, but he always wanted to be the great. You know what I'm saying? He might have lost sight of it in the process. I agree. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's it, though. I think he always wanted to be great, but when he met Fletcher and Fletcher...
he lumped them together. Like, Fletcher's approval equals I'm great. You know what I mean? Because Fletcher sets it up that he does not have any... His standards are impossible to reach. You know what I mean? You'll never make him happy until the end. But going off the end, when he's playing that banging drum solo, that Fletcher's controlling him. By the time he gets into it, he starts slowing him down a little bit. And then he starts telling him to pick it up. You know what I mean? Like,
but
there's that dynamic.
It's so good because at first Neiman actually has control. At first he's like, I'll cue you in, which is just like, okay, Andrew has a little bit of control. It's his domain. But then when he starts playing and Fletcher just gets a sense of what's going on, then Fletcher comes back and adjusts the cymbal, right?
He corrects it for him after he knocks it down.
And he's like, it's my world. And it's kind of just like, all right, now I got you. And it's kind of like they're having sex. It's amazing.
He takes his jacket off. You see his biceps.
You see his like shaking of like, it's fucking like orgasmic kind of.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, right down. I mean, yeah, it's almost like even the close-up shot of Andrew while he's playing it, like, people joke about it, but it does look like he's whacking off too.
No, I think all of this is intentional in a way.
There is like it is funny. There is like a weird kind of erotic energy there.
I want to table this for a second. Yeah. Because like we will go into deeper about why that finale is what it is. But yeah, I think you're right. It can maybe be both. I always thought it was like, because we've had arguments about what it really meant. Yeah. But I think the place where we can go that we haven't talked about is Andrew and Nicole.
Okay. Yeah.
I do have stuff to say about that.
Oh, yeah, but yeah.
So, first of all, one of the great asking out scenes.
Just that one single wide.
I've also, me being me, I have seen that scene like hundreds of times on YouTube. Really? Oh, yeah. That's like showing that Damien Chazelle can also do that.
Yeah.
He can do a love story. Like, that's a guy who grew up on musicals. That's like he can also
do a meet cute, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that it's all in one wide. It's so cute. It's so exciting.
Sure.
But aside from that, so I think what's interesting about this is that I caught this time around. He takes her to a pizza place that looks like the shittiest pizza place you've ever been.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is that he's kind of self-centered from the beginning. Like, he takes her there, obviously not thinking about, like, if it's, like, a good first date spot. I mean, granted, he's a college kid, probably broke, whatever, right? And she's happy to be there. It's fine.
But he's not, like, a debonair, suave guy.
But the reason he took her there was because the jazz music is good. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I like the jazz music here.
He wanted to flex a little bit for her. Like, he named the artist and the year it came out.
He, they immediately start talking about, like, so what do you want to do? Like, where do you go? And she's like, I go to Fordham. Mm-hmm. I don't have a major. And he sees that as such like a sin.
Yeah, it was clearly like the subtext was very judgmental for sure.
Well, it reminded me, in all caps I put Social Network Rooney Mara scene.
Oh God, I know.
It's literally the opening scene in a different context and much cuter and less like aggressive. The opening scene of Social Network and this scene, the two things that they have in common. And I'm talking about, for the viewer and listener, I'm talking about the first date that Andrew and Nicole have. A man is trying to find connection with a girl, but really only cares about being great.
Yeah, he just kind of
finals clubs for Social Network.
You're the Phoenix, you know.
The Phoenix getting pumped, and getting punched by the Phoenix.
Yeah.
And then in Social Network, Mark was very critical of her, being like, you don't need to study. You go to BU.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know.
Which is literally Fordham is a version of that. Like, he's like very critical of that.
Yeah.
Now, eventually they switch out to something sweet. They play a little footsie, and it's nice, right? But it does kind of touch a little bit about where Andrew's head's at.
100%. I was gonna say it definitely sets up where his priorities are, that he has no real interest in like connecting with someone meaningfully, that like he doesn't understand the concept that people can live simple lives and that's okay. Like if she just wants to go to a normal school,
or if she's just figuring it out, like right, she doesn't know what her major is, and like to be honest, like college, when I was in college, I was always like, why do people know what their major is? You're in college, figure it out. Again, I used to be a lot more like Andrew, where I was like, I know what I want to do. And funny enough, my major in college isn't what I'm doing now.
Yeah, funny how that plays out, huh?
But I was like that. And it's interesting, like most people in college are figuring it out, and Andrew can't accept that people can be like that.
Totally.
The breakup is just like, I love how she's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, because he just says so blankly, like, you know, oh yeah, you're literally an obstacle to me.
It happens right after he gets pushed to alternate. O'Connor is his name?
Connolly?
I just don't want to say Flannery again.
O'Connor. Which, quick side note, Ryan Connolly's smile, his big old shit-eating grin, is one of my favorites I've seen, where he's just there, like, smiling
and he's,
big.
like, always there. Yeah. And he is... Also, I love the idea that they were just like, who's the most redhead guy we can find? Do you have anything to say about their relationship? Or
yeah, no, I mean, you took the words pretty much out of my mouth. I agree that the dynamic is 100% there, and it's kind of just... It's sad, too, that he also calls her again later, after they break up.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, like, too late for him.
That scene is great just because you need that scene to kind of show that people are going to move on.
Life goes on, yeah.
Just, like, you wanting to be great means that people will move on.
Mm-hmm. And you have to let it go.
And that shot is great, too. It just stays on him a little bit. It's another example of just, like, right after, like, Fletcher, like... You know, right after he attacks Fletcher,
yeah,
and gets kicked out of Schaefer, and that whole fiasco happens, the movie slows down in its editing as well. You know,
that's true. Yeah, it's funny. I paid so much attention to like the writing pace of it.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, visually,
no, it makes sense how you focus on the writing and I focus on the editing.
Yeah, that's just how you and I are wired, right?
The sequence that I feel like is Goodfellas to me is everything from like when he's on the bus to renting the car. To being there, to then being like, fuck, I forgot my drumsticks.
Like the last half hour of Goodfellas where
it's the helicopter sequence.
Yeah, totally.
The way it's cut, too, the way it cuts to close-ups of the clock, which Damien Chazelle didn't even bring it up, but Damien Chazelle, throughout his filmmaking, is brilliant at using inserts to build the world and build attention. He does that in this movie, also does that in Babylon extremely well.
Okay.
But this sequence is Ray Liotta coked out with a helicopter chasing
Yeah, it's basically the same sequence, yeah.
What did you think about it? Because I have heard criticism of the car crash stuff.
Just the car crash in itself. My thing is, I agree there is a criticism to be had there. I think the car crash is fine, even down to Andrew like still following through and running over to try to still perform. I'm okay with all that.
Me too.
Because they've been planting the seeds that Andrew's slowly losing his sanity.
And this is the world that the story's revolving in. The stakes are this high and it's been established.
Exactly, 100%. But I think where I kind of lose like believability is when everyone else is sort of cool with him playing in a puddle of his own blood, even down to Fletcher just kind of being like, huh, that's strange. Like, he doesn't, like...
In my notes, I have exactly that, where I'm just like, I'm fine up until everyone's like, yeah, let's keep playing.
Yeah. Like,
no, that happens, Fletcher stopping the show. Everyone, whoever's judging in the audience is like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
You know, you see the blood on his face. No one just continues.
Yeah. I think, maybe, you know, I don't know if I'm not one to give a note to this movie, like, oh, this would be better. But it might be better is if he quickly tried to clean it up. You know what I'm saying? And maybe surface level kind of covered him, like it kind of wiped the blood off his face or something before showing up to try to pretend he was okay.
Yeah, I think because like you would definitely lose momentum.
Yeah. But the thing, you do need that scene where he's playing while battered and broken and dropping his drumsticks. Which, side note, as a drummer, dropping your sticks while playing is so humiliating. It's the worst feeling ever. It happens. And normally you have sticks that are right there on backup, but they established that Andrew only had the one pair of sticks that he went back to get.
You need the lowest low.
Yeah.
And since this movie has built up these stakes so high, you need a low that's that insane.
Yeah.
Like, you need something that's crazy, that would fuck up Andrew so hard that he would tackle Fletcher on the stage. It needs to peak that way. So I understand why they did it, but I did want to just bring up that it's something very much like Goodfellas, you know?
Yeah, that's funny, you know. I didn't even think of Martin Scorsese once when I was doing all my research and notes for this movie. And
I think I started thinking about him more once I heard that podcast where Damien Chazelle was talking about it on the Scorsese influence on this movie.
And it totally makes sense. Now that you bring it up, it's just funny that it's like...
Your mind just didn't go there.
Totally, not at all.
I think we can talk about the finale finally.
Yeah,
because
it's pretty cool, isn't it?
You know, before we get into it, I just want to bring this up, and then I'm going to shut up about like any Scorsese reference because I've been talking a lot about it. Damien Chazelle said that a lot of this movie was based on the fact that he wanted the drumming to look like how Raging Bull felt like, the Raging Bull fight scenes felt like.
Okay, yeah.
Which the fight scenes, if you watch Raging Bull,
they're very visceral.
They're not like... boxing doesn't matter. It's not the technicalities of boxing. It's more about how you're feeling when they're fighting, and the cutting is so rapid, and it's like nothing you've seen before.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing with the drumming here. And especially during like when Fletcher and Andrew are looking at each other in that finale sequence, the first cut of it looked like a music video. So Damien Chazelle and the editor went back and inserted a lot of like shots of Andrew and Fletcher looking at each other, their eyes. Mm-hmm. But Damien Chazelle shot that in a way where he fucked up, and every close-up of them looking at each other was not in line in the 180. Okay. So they had to flip the image.
Weird, that's funny.
But they did all that so it doesn't look like a music video, and you're like connected with the characters.
Yeah, it still feels like a movie, like with drama happening.
That
not
is
like a musical sequence, you know, out of Singing in the Rain or something like that.
It's also, don't you just like suspect something's fishy the first time you're watching it when Fletcher's like, all right, gang, everyone's counting on you, have fun. And then like,
yeah, it goes so smooth.
He's uncharacteristically polite. Like,
I know. I think like the first time you see it, you think like, oh, he's just put his guard down because he's not a teacher anymore. He's just playing with
100%.
musicians.
Yeah.
But yeah,
this is like this is a job for hire. It's not his
exactly
anymore.
And but then right he goes up to him and he's like, you know, you think I'm fucking stupid?
I know it was you. All right, gang, we're gonna play something else.
Yeah. What was it? Upswinging.
Upswinging.
Yeah.
And it like pushes in on Andrew when he sees Whiplash and he fucks up. And then the line is, yeah, I guess maybe you don't have it.
Oh, I know. It's fucking brutal. You know, Andrew basically has like the drumming equivalent of a theater mayor. You and I have talked about this, but for listeners, theater people have told me about this. I don't know if this is like universal. Every theater kid knows this, but I've been told this by multiple theater people, that a theater mayor is basically a nightmare where you dream you're in a scene where you don't know the lines, where you dream you're on stage in costume and you don't know what play you're doing, and you're looked at by everyone like you're supposed to be performing, but you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And
it's the equivalent of like having that nightmare of like you're performing in front of your school, or you're doing a spelling bee, but you know you're naked or something like that.
Yeah, it's like this weird, humiliated...
Which is a nightmare I definitely haven't had.
I've had several of those.
Yeah, I have too. Yeah.
But with that being said, yeah, circling back to Whiplash, though, is that it's kind of his equivalent of that, where he's just playing, they're all playing a song and he has no fucking clue.
And the movie makes a point of how prestigious this is. I mean, the stage looks beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
It's lit beautifully. It's like, this is a big event. And again, it's that moment of Andrew, like, when Fletcher walks up to him and Andrew's, like, smiling. He's like, hey. Like, he doesn't say hey, but it's kind of that. It's like, you think I'm fucking stupid? The thing that they're referring to, for people who haven't seen the movie in a while, is that Andrew basically agreed with the lawyer to make a statement against Fletcher.
Yeah.
About the Sean Casey suicide thing.
Exactly. To validate his methods.
Which got Fletcher fired.
Yeah.
But then they get into Whiplash. And, well, no, before that, like, he stands up and goes to his dad. And his dad, like, hugs him.
Oh, yeah, he hugs him afterwards, yeah.
Right?
Then he goes back, then you're saying when he goes back to play Caravan?
And I always thought that was, like, such an interesting thing of just, like, him hugging his dad and then deciding to go.
Yeah.
It's, like, such a, all right, goodbye, Dad, I'm not part of you anymore.
Yeah, because what did his dad say after they hug?
It's like, I'm proud of you or something like that?
Yeah.
I forget. Shit, I wish I remembered.
But he expresses his support, and I think it kind of just triggered Andrew to be like, oh, wait, this is what a loser does, kind of thing.
It's just like, you didn't see that I fucked up there.
Yeah.
You didn't see that I fucked up there. And if you really understood me, you would know that I didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
I don't deserve praise from you. Yeah. And because he realizes his dad doesn't understand him in that way, he doesn't understand how great he wants to be.
He's like, I'm on my own. I gotta handle this myself.
And that shot of Andrew just being like, I'll cue you, and he starts playing on his own. And then Fletcher looks at him.
Yeah.
And it's that wide of Andrew, like, there. And he's, like, kind of swaying. It's like a dance.
Oh, yeah.
And then Andrew just mouths to him, fuck you. I didn't catch that. Like,
that he says fuck you to
I
him?
caught that this time.
It's so good. And then he goes up to me, he's like, I'll gouge out your motherfucking eyes.
And
then
the
he
symbol hits him.
to like hit him.
It's like, fuck you, bitch. We're on the same level.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but that's what makes Fletcher like really impressed. Because again, that from the get-go, he wanted Andrew to really have the confidence and security in himself to not rely on Fletcher's opinion anymore in a weird way.
Yeah, it's such a great finale. It's one of the great endings like ever. Like it's so good. I'm speaking in hyperbole, and it's maybe not the best way to talk about a movie, but it's like, it's true. When I saw this movie in theaters, I'm like, I've never seen an ending like that.
Yeah.
Especially
again, it's a drum solo. It's a drum solo. For me, it's fucking crack. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and as a person who doesn't just listen to drum solos, obviously I haven't seen Buddy Rich play. You know, like I'm not fluent in this world, right? If this is a scene that grabs a person like me, then this movie's really working. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it's so like, for me, it's like I don't even care like that I don't know about the music. It sounds good. The thing that's impressive is like, sure, this music is nice, but I'm not even focused on that.
No, it's all in the emotion and like,
which is what's impressive is that like this whole movie, I'm not even thinking about the music. For a movie about the arts, it's not really about the arts at all.
No, yeah.
It's about like something that's very universal, which is what I appreciate, right? And that this scene showcases that. Like, I'm not even like paying attention to what he's playing. I'm paying attention to like how Fletcher's feeling, how Andrew's feeling. I mean, that's like simple filmmaking 101 shit, where you should be focusing on what the characters are feeling and what the emotions are instead of the plot, right? But like, how many filmmakers are actually able to do that successfully, especially at their first at bat?
That's the thing. It achieves it in such flying colors that it doesn't feel like a first movie.
Isn't it like showing, not telling, right?
Yeah.
That's what these final 10 minutes are.
Oh, there's no dialogue in it.
It's like, I remember like I got goosebumps when it crash zooms and slam cuts to the end. You know, that epic shot where J.K. Simmons is like, boom, and then it like the lights flash.
Yeah.
I'm like, bang out ending. God damn, you're 25 and you did this.
I know, dude. Also, during that, I wanted to touch on during that last solo too. Probably my favorite shot in the movie.
I know what you're bringing up.
Yeah, is that single close-up of his dad watching him. Because I love that it's not a look of amazement or impressed.
Like, what happened to my boy?
He's afraid. You know what I mean? He's afraid. Like, he's like, what the, like, again, like I said, it feels like Frankenstein's monster. He sees his son became a monster for a moment there.
And what's tragic about it is his son was so close to being human again, right? Like, there was that sequence where he's like, even though he was kind of living a boring life, he was out in New York just having pizza. You know what I mean? Yeah. He was kind of like regaining his humanity a little bit. And he got pulled back in.
Yeah. 100%.
That shot is great. It's the only shot that takes you out of the drumming.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a relief in a weird way too, where it's like, finally his dad understands what he's been fucking going through too. You know what I'm saying? Because I think from his perspective, he just saw like, oh, my son's a good drummer, and he was just pressured really hard by his teacher. His teacher was just crazy and mean to him. But seeing the talent that came out of his son too creates a whole different perspective on it.
Well, aren't you also like, I feel you're also the dad in some way. It's not a look of admiration, like you said, it's a look of terror.
Yeah.
I'm just like, shit, this is what it takes? Like, you have to go through this to become this?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you feel as an audience member, of just like, well, is the only way to become truly great, you have to go through personal torture and hell and abuse? But again, the movie doesn't give you answers.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the movie does answer to an extent that, like, it requires sacrifice to become great. I think, to me, the question is it worth it? You know what I mean?
That's what I'm talking about.
Is that what's necessary?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, he sacrifices so much. He doesn't enjoy it anymore. He's not happy anymore.
But there's a part of me that also agrees with Fletcher, is that, like, it'd be a shame if we didn't have someone as great as Charlie Parker. Because, like, you get inspired by the greats. You get inspired, like, I get inspired by Damien Chazelle.
Yeah.
I get inspired by artists who did go through that torture. And I just like, I want to be just as great as them, you know?
Yeah, totally.
But they had to go through that. But because of them, we have great art that's inspired us. Even if you don't want to be an artist, art can still inspire you in other ways. And art can affect you, and art can like bring you closer to your loved ones with music or with movies.
Yeah,
or
well, I
whatever.
mean-
And I'm just like, if we don't have that, that's a big loss. But I'm like, should those people go through that? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's very subjective, and to summarize it. I think, like, especially in today's culture, I mean, not really today's, but there was a brief period where everyone was romanticizing, like, the hustle and grind of putting yourself through the ringer and, oh, well, while you were sleeping, I was grinding.
Yeah, I think COVID changed a lot of that.
Yeah, 100, exactly. That's why I got to clarify. It's a little bit
It's still out
older.
there, though.
It exists, 100%,
Yeah.
and that will never die. There will always be people that believe that. I've always been on the opposite end of that. I think a lot of today's, whatever, the internet culture of people posting shit all the time and whatever, I think people need to embrace simplicity a little bit more. That's just me. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything wrong with other people who do it in a certain way, but I value my privacy, and that's okay.
I do too. Yeah.
And so,
I mean, you and I have talked a lot about this, right? Like, we have ambitions for the channel. We really want this channel to grow. We enjoy. I mean, we're starting a second channel. This is like, there's a reason why we're doing this, right? Because
100%.
we want to grow, right? But you and I have also talked about it. Just like, you and I are not in the market for like becoming the biggest movie YouTubers in the platform.
Yeah, we don't I don't believe in making a spectacle of my life. I'll come on camera and I'll watch movies with you, and I'll talk about movies, and I'll talk about this shit with you. You know what I mean?
But I think we're both not interested in being like, how do we expose ourselves? Like, let's get on social media, make sure we're posting stories or whatever. I think for us, it's more about just like, building an audience that loves to like watch movies with us.
Yep.
And talk about movies with us. And, those are goals that are very simple, but it's not like someone like Andrew's or other people's, right? Where like, no, I want to be number one. And that's a mentality that I did have when I first moved to LA,
Sure.
And like the dad, I gained a little perspective with age.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, experience too. Age and experience. Because there are people who are your age that still don't fucking get perspective. People older than you that still don't get it. But
to be frank, it's funny. Like, sometimes I think it's good for people to have that, like, to a little bit be like a little cocky, To be like, no, I am good and I want to be great. I think that's important too, right?
Totally.
I'm not shutting that down. I don't think everybody needs to be like, be simple, Like, if you want to achieve something really big,
don't
go
kick
for it.
ass. Yeah.
But there's a cost to everything, and you got to be self-aware of what you really want.
Everything in life has a cost. You know what I mean? Everything.
Yeah.
There's always as we get older, there are a lot of sacrifices that are just necessary, to be fulfilled, whatever it is,
I think like this is a movie that I could watch again a year from now and then still call you up and have a conversation about.
Oh yeah.
There's not that many movies like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this stands the test of time. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We're so excited that we finally got to talk about Whiplash.
Yeah, I've been waiting. I feel like I've been holding in a fart that I've been just wanting to release.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I did feel that way about Goodfellas. I think the biggest fart will be Jurassic Park. When we let that out, that shit's gonna stink, dude.
All right, on that note, now is the time we are going to move over to the after show. So if you're not part of our Patreon, we'd love if you hopped on and joined our Way Too Nice Dude tier. And basically, it's an extra 15 to 20 minutes where we just casually hang out outside of the Whiplash reviews. And now we're just going to talk as friends.
So thank you so much for watching, listening, subscribing, and stay nice, dudes.